Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and today is part 2 of A Woman's Prerogative. So for those of you who are fans of the show, this is a second episode that is going to take place each and every Monday night or Tuesday morning, depending where in the world you are. Joining me is a big part of our platform. I've been working with MARISKA. She's a friend and she's a colleague, and we met actually through getting certified as a holistic life, career, and executive coach. And she's taken that coaching even further. She's an author. She's one of our expert presenters on Talking Heads. She's an elevated listener, and she's also a transformation and leadership coach. Let's welcome her to the program. A Woman's Prerogative. Hello.
Hello. Wow, that is a mouthful. It feels like a wow.
It's a lot, right? When you think about it.
Yeah. Like, really? Did I do all of that? It feels like a lot.
It is a lot, Mariska. And by the way, you look so much taller than I am. How tall are you?
Oh, I am not that tall. I am, okay, so you guys work in inches and I have no idea what I am in inches. I am 1.62 meters.
Wow.
So, I don't know
I've never heard it in meters. I'm 5'3" in inches, so we'll have to figure it out.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. I have an app on my phone that, well, don't we all have apps on our phones that does all the things that we needed to do?
I'm going to say that you're 5'5" or 5'6".
Length. Okay, so come on. No, I don't want to open that. Go away. All right, so I am meters. Where's the kilometers? No, I'm not kilometers.
You're not kilometers, that's for sure.
That would have been very tall. Okay, so in inches. No. Do you guys work inch feet?
Well, put me in inches. So I'm 63 inches.
There you go. We are almost the same length. 63.77.
How about that? You know what it is? I don't have my shoes on. Otherwise, I'd be like this with my shoes on. That's what it is.
Yeah, there you go. See, and that's the thing about being in virtual land, right? We have a tendency to not know how tall other people are. I remember meeting somebody virtually. Very first time we met was online, and we communicated online for quite a couple of months before actually meeting in person. And then when we met in person, she looked at me and said, "Oh, you are a lot shorter than I thought." Okay, great. Because, well, she thought I was taller than I am. And we don't get that perspective when we online, because you don't really have anything to compare it to. I mean, I have a lovely background that has no indication of how tall I am.
So true. It is so true. Well, I think that, by the way, I got taller since I saw you because I moved my computer screen down lower.
See, so easy to get taller.
Well, I'm really excited to do this show with you at this new time. And I think it opens up opportunity for other women who want to be part of this because of the timing. So we could have people who are in your time zone there in New Zealand, and we could also have people here in the States who are on Pacific Standard Time or Pacific Daytime join us as well. So our topic is what I've learned from my intuition. And I want to let you know, Mariska, that earlier today on A Woman's Prerogative, we talked about imposter syndrome. And I'm wondering if there's any connection between imposter syndrome and intuition. That could be an interesting topic. So, let's talk first of all about what do you have come up for you when you think about intuition. What is your intuition?
That's always a very interesting one. I think for me, intuition has there's part of it where my brain goes into the sciences, and I think about the fact that our brain as a function of it to help us to function within life in general, it looks for patterns. So when we have experiences and certain things, it's easy for our brain to associate things within that space. So we are forever looking for patterns. And the reason our brain does this is to make things easier for us. It takes a lot of energy, so physical energy, for us to use our brain's computing powers. And if we can reduce the amount of computing that we need to do by seeing the pattern and then just going, okay, because I know this pattern, I just go and do this other thing, it makes it easier for us in general. Now, sometimes the pattern are correctly identified and sometimes not. And to a degree, I think that has a little bit to do with intuition. So it is an experience we had before or something very similar to what we had before. And our brain automatically makes that link. It sees the pattern and sort of goes, okay, I know this thing. I've gone through this thing and this is how I handled it before. Hopefully we learned through the experience whether it worked or didn't work. And this is how I can readjust or do this time around. And I also think intuition has to do with that bigger knowing, our more of a source knowing or a universal knowing or whatever it is that you want to name it. It is a bigger knowing, and understanding that it's almost a download from that happens. And I think that is also a part of intuition. So yeah, there's different aspects for me personally. There's different aspects to this thing called intuition. Now, knowing that that's my point of view, Dr. Jacalyn, how do you see intuition?
I think you brought up some really interesting points that I hadn't actually considered before. For me, intuition is a couple of things. One of them is it's a feeling in your gut. I don't know how to describe it, but you're about to do something and you have this feeling that something's just not right. Like you ate some kind of Mexican food or something, nothing, if it just didn't sit well with you, or you had too much garlic or too much milk or something. And you say to yourself, I don't know, I'm getting this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach that I shouldn't be doing this. And then the other thing is, it's like a voice that isn't really a voice, that's kind of like, oh, okay, I don't think you should go down this path, almost like that angel devil thing. And you say to yourself, okay, I'm just ignoring this because I'm moving forward about it. But I don't know how to describe it. I like how you described it a lot better. I think that makes a lot more sense. So when you think about your intuition, does anything stand out? And you don't have to share what it is, but does anything stand out when your intuition basically said, don't do this, Mariska, and you did it anyway?
It's interesting. I think sometimes, and it's part of that voice that you mentioned, or that inner feeling. sometimes we listen to it and sometimes we don't. And I think we also, whether it is an experience and it comes from a pattern and something that we sort of experienced before, and that's the reason why it came up, or whether it is from the bigger knowing, we don't listen to either one of them from time to time, either because we're not aware of them. So it's almost like being intuitively deaf. So sometimes we are intuitively deaf. We don't notice to notice what it is that's coming up. And other times we are selective of hearing. So intuitively selective of hearing in the sense of, yeah, I get this information and then I choose to ignore it. So for me, I got the information and chose to ignore it. I specifically think of a cooking incident that I've had. And I know that's such a silly place to get intuition, but that's a good place to actually exercise it and see whether we are listening or whether we are deaf. So I did, and I can't remember what it was. There was something that I put a specific place on the counter. And as I was putting it in this spot, the thought came up, that will most probably fall on the floor if it stands there. And then I was thinking, but it's on the counter. Why will it fall on the floor? That doesn't make sense. So I discarded the thought. I continued on with the cooking. And lo and behold, as I'm busy, I moved my body. And as I was moving my body, I think I had a spoon or something in my hand, and I knocked it over. And I spilled a whole bunch of, it had liquid in it. I can't remember whether it wasn't oil. I think it was milk or water. I think it was milk, because it made quite a bit of a mess and I was fairly upset with myself. So I did that. I'm like, oh man, I should have just listened to the voice saying, move it. If it was anywhere else on the counter, it would have been fine. But because of exactly where it was standing, it ended up being knocked over. So that is something that's coming up for me at the moment. It's like, yeah, I should have listened to that time in that space.
That's a really good example too, because you caused yourself a mess that you then had to clean up. And sometimes it can be a really big mess, one that you can't just clean up with some paper towels or something. I had I forget over the weekend what day it was. I went to the grocery store and I couldn't remember which exit it was because I haven't been here for a number of months. And so I put the signal on and I moved over into the right lane. And my intuition said, it's not at this exit. And I literally was kind of straddling the exit in the highway. Like, what should I do? And I thought, okay, I'm going to go with the intuition. And I cruised back over, and it wasn't at that exit. It was at the next one. So I remember thinking to myself, which is kind of why I picked this topic, that was my intuition. And to what you said earlier, which makes perfect sense, is that my brain was trained to go to the food store, the grocery store, and it knew that this wasn't the way we had gone before.
Yeah. So it already saw the pattern and it was going, hey, this is the wrong pattern. So no, we shouldn't be taking this one. We should take the next one. So yes, that makes absolute sense.
You know, what's interesting as a certified coach is that we help people break their patterns, right? Dysfunctional patterns of behavior that we all get into over and over again. So I guess what I'm wondering is, when it comes to intuition, if it's based on patterns, it can be based on patterns that are healthy and patterns that are dysfunctional. Is that correct?
And I think that's the piece that we need to take into consideration with our intuition. So, and that's why I've mentioned that for me, there's these two pieces. There's the one where our brain actually sees the patterns, and that's what it's telling us. It's telling us, I've seen this pattern before. This is what happened. Now, we can also reframe what we associate with the pattern. To give you an example, within the NLP community, so it's neuro-linguistic programming. So within that space, we can help ourselves to wherever it is that we have attached a specific way of thinking to anything, we can change it. So say, for instance, we were afraid of snakes, right? Don't like snakes. If I see a snake, even if it's on the TV, I go and hide behind the couch. Now, if that's the case, then I have linked something specific to the actual snake. So it doesn't matter what sort of snake it is, that's what's linked. For instance, one of my friends had this phobia around worms. So much so that I recall very vividly, we were playing tennis in the yard without a net or anything, just sort of knocking the ball around. And she hit the ball and it went into some bushes. And at this area where the bushes were, there were some grasses growing. And I went to look for the ball and she came to help me. And then all of a sudden, she was going berserk. So I didn't know what the hell was going on. And she's just starting to rip off her jersey that she's on. And she does this with her hair. And I'm like, what is happening? And she said, no, there's worms. And I'm looking and I'm not seeing any worms. And she says, no, there in the bushes, there's worms. And I look at the grasses, and the end of the grass, so the seeds of the grass, actually makes like a longish, dark seed. And it sort of looks like a worm if you look at it very fast. And I'm like, no, it's grass seeds, it's not worms. So her brain automatically said, hey, this is a worm, get away, because she has a phobia for worms. And then once I showed her, no, it's a grass seed, she was like, she's like, oh, okay, are you sure there's no worms? So that's what our brain can do with us when it sees a pattern that it wants to protect us from, for instance. Now, in NLP, we can change that. And that is through coaching. That what we also do is we help people to redefine the pattern for themselves. So we can help people to not be scared of snakes or worms or other things in life. So changing that pattern helps us to see it differently and react to it differently. So we behave different around it. And that is part of that intuition piece, where sometimes we might intuitively feel like, yeah, this would be a better way to go. And it might actually be not such a good thing for us, because the pattern that we're seeing and the meaning that we have attached to it is not helping us in the process or in the place that we want to be going to. So yeah, that was a very long way of answering a short question.
No, I think that's interesting because I didn't know a lot about NLP. So thanks for sharing that education with us. What about when a person hasn't been in this situation before? And I'll give an example. There is a reality TV show that puts people together and they haven't seen one another. So they're speaking through a wall, and then they have a point in time where they pick who it is that they want to be with, and then they meet in person and so on and so forth. And then they have to make a decision if they want to walk down the aisle. So that's a reality TV show. But in real life, I do know of someone who was dating someone and they got engaged and the wedding date was set. And at the actual wedding, after this person walked down the aisle when they were exchanging vows, the person said no. They changed their mind. So it's one thing if it's a reality TV show, and it's another thing if all this money and time has been spent, everybody's there to witness. And my point is, don't you think that that person knew that through their intuition before they walked down that aisle that they were going to say no? Or do you think it's something that comes to us in a single second like that?
I think it can be both. And the reason why I say I think it can be both is I think sometimes we have this inner knowing where, a little bit like me in spilling the milk, I knew I had a thought of this is not the greatest place to put it, and yet I still did that. Right? So I had the inner knowing. At any point before spilling the milk, I could have changed the position of that container. I could have moved it and it wouldn't have happened because I still had the inner knowing. I was aware of it. I just didn't do anything with the information. And in saying that, the way that I see it happening in the moment is from time to time, I do think that we are continuously making new meaning and changing the way that we think. So when you think about yourself and the way that you thought about the world 3 weeks ago, and you think about the way that you think about it now, there's certain elements of it, and some of them might be very, very small. That's changed because we learned new things in the meantime. And because of the things that we learn, we change the way that we look at the world. We change the way that we make meaning from what it is that we perceive. So for that person, it might be that they had a conversation that was a crucial conversation for them on that day before walking down the aisle. And the meaning they made for themselves, maybe during the conversation, maybe after the conversation, even while they were walking down the aisle, was, this is not the right thing for me to do. And then they come to the front and they are asked, so is this I do? And then they're like, no, it's not. So I think both can happen because we are continuously making meaning from everything that we experience as human beings.
I think that's really true what you said. I think also if we could survey people who are married and how many people actually walked down that aisle and said to themselves, I'm doing the wrong thing, but went through with it anyway because of all the money that was spent, because of not wanting to hurt the other person in their family. I think that would be really interesting if we could get people to confess that that's really what the case was. So I want to go back to your milk example because this just popped into my head. What is the difference? And I'll give an example before I go into it. Let's say that my computer is on this stand, which it is. It's on a stand. And I know that if I push this back, it could fall off the stand. I know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible in my animation, I could hit it and it would fall off. Is that intuition or is it common sense? So when you had your container there, if you turned around, the likelihood of you hitting it was pretty high. Is that intuition or common sense?
See, and that's where the whole saying around common sense not being common anymore comes in. Common sense has to do with our experiences. Common sense comes from the things that we have a reference field around. So if we don't have a reference field around it, it's not common to us. It might be common to somebody else. And yes, in the case of said container, that's most probably why I had a voice in my head going, hey, that's most likely going to get hit off, right? Move it. Because I've had experiences in the past where my brain knows where my body is going and what sort of environment I need for me to make the little circles that I make within the spaces that I work. And that's where my brain went, okay, so this is in the wrong place. You will most probably hit it because of the way that you work. So that would have been a common sense thing that my brain picked up on and I didn't listen to at the time. Now, if somebody has never worked in the kitchen before, right, they don't necessarily have a common knowing of what can and cannot happen for them within that space. It might be a foreign idea for them in certain areas. They might do things a bit of a different way. So common sense is really around our reference framework. And that's why everybody's common sense isn't the same. So for some people, for instance, I have studied within engineering. So for me, certain things, certain concepts are quite common. It's like, why didn't you think about it that way? Because that is my reference field. That is where I come from. That is what I have seen. So for me, it's easy to see the patterns within that space. Whereas somebody else, maybe coming from the arts world, do not have that. They have no idea of really how that space works. And they don't necessarily have a reference for that. And that is where our common sense piece comes in. So common sense is also about our broad knowledge. So it's not only about the deep knowledge, it's also about the broad knowledge. So thinking about, for instance, there's certain elements within engineering that most people won't know, and I know most people won't know it because it's very engineering specific. Then there is certain things in general, common, right, that most people should at least have some idea around. And everybody doesn't necessarily have an idea around it because everybody doesn't have that broad knowledge anymore for some interestingly odd reason that has something to do with social media, I suspect. But that's me digressing.
You know, I'm loving this conversation. I want to take it one step further. Let's say you and I have a business and we are looking to hire some people.
Mhm.
And we get some resumes, and you and I are sitting there together or virtually, whatever. Let's say we're together. We finally meet. Yay. And we're both looking at the resumes and we're looking for an engineer. And you read the qualifications this person has, and you see they have all of the qualifications that we're looking for. And I don't know anything about engineering. And I say to you, Mariska, I have a feeling about this person. I don't think they're the right one. And you say, look, it's pretty common sense. It's black and white. We've hired people before. They have everything that we put into the job description of what we're looking for. And I say, I don't know. I got this feeling in my gut that it's not going to work out. Is that intuition and common sense?
I would say that would go into the intuition, and it's most probably there's something that you are picking up on. So this might be a pattern that you have seen. Remember, because even within our interactions with other human beings, we see certain things. We pick up on certain things. We have specific types of interactions. So say, for instance, we have been in relationships before and there was some trust issue, right? Because of that, we now have a reference field around that specifically. Now, your reference field around it will most definitely be different to mine, because we all have different experiences in life. Yes, there's certain commonalities, but the nuances for the experiences can be quite different. So you will pick up on something where maybe they have put everything in the resume. All the boxes are ticked, right? And immediately for you, there's lights flashing. It's like, no, something's wrong. Something feels wrong. You can't necessarily put your finger on it, but something feels off. And I'm sure if we go into it and we dig a little bit more, we will find the thing that feels off. Because there's a reason why it's coming up for you. So there's typically, for me, I think when when we feel something, when we have this inclination of, I'm not sure, there's something going on here that I can't exactly put my finger on it, but my gut is telling me there's something wrong. It's worthwhile digging a bit more to find out what it is. So yeah, I will definitely, if the two of us were sitting together and looking at it, I'll be asking questions, because there's a reason why red lights are flashing for you.
Absolutely. Now, I want to turn it the other way. The other way is that this person has none of the qualifications that we're looking for. And yet I think it's a perfect fit because they're not coming with baggage. So is that based on behavior that I've seen in the past, or is that just a feeling that this person can be coached and mentored to do the job the way we want them to do it?
Possibly a little bit of both. It might be that you picked up on something that the person, so depending on whether we've had a conversation with them, how they present themselves on their resume. So if we have only had read material, it might be that the wording that they use, the phrasing that they use are such that it invokes specific links for us within that space. So I think it's a little bit of both. It might be that we have our own mental model that we work according to. So I know for a lot of people, they say, well, I don't really care what your qualifications are, as long as there's potential. If I can see that there's potential, we can teach you anything. Which, yes, to a large degree, I absolutely agree. And if I have a specific thing that I need to understand that you are good at already. So not everybody on this planet are great problem solvers. We are not. My father-in-law, that now unfortunately has passed away quite a couple of years back, are not mechanically inclined, or he wasn't mechanically inclined at all. He could not even hang a door, literally. We had to go and help for that. So we're not all built the same. We're not supposed to be built the same. We need to at least establish whether there is some inclination towards the thing that we want the person to do, over and above the fact that they have all the zest and the enthusiasm and the ability to learn and willingness to learn within that space. So there's a little bit of a balance that we also need to take into consideration when we're doing it. And that's most probably something that you picked up on. It's like, yep, they have the basic building blocks and they can learn more. So yay, that works, even if the rest of the CV might not be ticking all the boxes.
Absolutely. I do feel that when one person is more inclined to listen to their intuition and their partners, or they're in a relationship, personal or professional, and the other one strictly by the book, by the numbers, by the whatever is right in front of them, that can cause some friction. What do you think?
Well, it goes back to we are all different. And see, that's the fun thing about intuition. It's something we can learn to listen to. We don't need to be deaf. So we can learn to listen to it over time, and with small little things. Literally being at home, doing stuff at home, right? If something comes up, listening to it. And then trying to figure out, if you are so inclined, as to why that came up. So I think it is a skill that is developable. For some people, it might be a little bit easier to develop it. And for some people, it might be a little bit more difficult to develop it, but definitely something we can all develop. Because, well, we all have all the building blocks we need.
Very, very true. Now, I want to wrap it into what the other group, A Woman's Prerogative, talked about earlier today, which is imposter syndrome. So when we think about, I don't want to say, but I am, not being comfortable in our own skin about something, it is possible, I think, and I'll give an example, that our intuition is telling us that we are worthy, that we will do it. An example would be you're about to step out onto a stage and give a presentation. And there are all these people there, important people. You can hardly see them. The whole place is filled with the people. And you feel like an imposter because what right do you have to be there? Even though you were invited, what, I'm going to use myself, what could I possibly have to say that is worthy of approval from these 5,000 people, for example? Okay. But my intuition is telling me I was brought there for a reason, to deliver a message. So I don't know. I just came up with this right now. What are your thoughts about it?
I think with imposter syndrome, it goes back to the fact that we have all had individual different experiences. Yes, as a species, we have similarities in our experiences. We all have some experience with love. We all have some experience with loss. It is different though. So even though we have an experience with loss, our earliest memory of loss might not be the same. Some people lost family members, really close family members, at a very early age. And some people lost a pet. So can it be compared? Well, it's both as loss, and both of them might have been detrimental for each individual. And there is nuances and differences within each. So I think for us, when we think about imposter syndrome, or for me, the way that I think about it for myself is nobody else has the same experiences than me in the same combination that I have them, because they didn't live my life. They don't think the way that I think. They don't make sense of the world the way that I make sense of the world. So, of course, I have something to bring to this conversation, even if it is only my point of view. That will be different from everybody else's, even in its relatability. So it will be relatable to everybody else because everybody else have had some form of the experience, but it will be individual because the combination of experiences that I've had versus everyone else is different. And that is always worth sharing.
I love this. I love everything that you just shared. If we were to take the title of the show and change it, the title right now is What I Learned from My Intuition. And we change the title to What I Learned from My Intuition About My Imposter Syndrome. What would you say to that?
What I learned from my intuition. I think, well, part of our imposter syndrome is the feeling of not belonging. Because if we break down imposter syndrome, right, is being an imposter. So if I am imposing, I don't belong. And I'm a human being. And the rest of the people are, well, human beings. I haven't seen any aliens on the planet yet. Maybe they are there, but they are well disguised. And if so, they are pretending to be human, which is good because then we are all pretending to be human. We're in the same boat. Wonderful. Which means we all have that experience in common. And that is then belonging. So I think it is the way that we think about things. And I also understand that people feel that they get imposter syndrome when they don't know enough, and then trying to maybe educate others around that topic. The way I look at that is I learn better and I make more meaning for myself when I teach others, because then I can see how much I understand of the topic. And if I don't quite get everything yet, that's fine. It's a yet. I can still learn more. And then next time I can improve it. Plus, always being open to other people's points of view, because they've had other experiences. So going into that humble, curious piece, while also sharing what it is that we got from our experience. Because literally, we have lived it. Nobody can tell us that we didn't, or we didn't feel that way, or that it didn't work that way, because for us, it did. And we are not an imposter in our own life.
Wow. I love that. I put you on the spot and you came up with a great answer. Fantastic. All right. I want to ask one more question. We are running out of time, but one more question. This could be a little bit of a dicey one. I don't know. But there's certain people who absolutely believe that they have lived other lives and that they will live other lives. And is it possible that our intuition is based on us having been here before, having done the same things, but in a different form?
I think so. It's the same as, do aliens exist? Well, there's so much space, literally space, as in planets, other planets out there, right? And you want to tell me that of all of that, this one is the only one with life that can be sustained? Plus, the other element of that is life as we know it on this planet. Is that the only type of life that there can be? I don't know. It doesn't mean that if I'm an ant, right, for instance, and I walk my little way home into wherever it is that I get my food and back, and I all of a sudden see this big thing, and it's the nose of a dog, but I don't know it's the nose of the dog, and I see this big thing and it goes, and it sniffs half my buddies up, that now all of a sudden that is what the universe is or isn't. It's just a very small piece. It's the only piece I can see. We can only see a very small piece. So I don't know. I haven't really met anybody that died and physically came back in the sense of, well, they went through the door, right? And then they turned around and they came back out to say, yeah, this is what happened. This is what's on the other side of it. There's people that had some death experiences and they have reported some things that they have seen. I cannot say whether it is or isn't so. It is all that fun piece of going through it and experiencing it for ourselves. But yes, I do think that we do come back in various shapes and forms.
It's exciting to talk about it because, to your point, how can we be so egotistical to think that we are the only game in town, that this is the only planet that where we have human life? Because why does it have to be human life? It could be any other type of life. And if you think about all the creatures that are on this planet Earth and how they're all in different forms, and we call them animals, we call them plants, or whatever it is we call them, but they don't look like we do, and they don't live their lives the way that we do. So yeah. I think it is definitely possible that we have feelings about things that we could have been in another life, and brought it with us. So yes, we're both on the same page with that. And that's not just the woman's intuition. That's just Mariska and my intuition. So
yeah, we're sharing this one, regardless what everybody else thinks out there. You know what? It's your experience as a human being. And I have met people that absolutely believe that once they die, that's it. Right? Once they're gone, they're gone. And great. If that's the way if that is what makes sense for you, then go for it. Whatever it is that makes sense for you, figure that out. Because that's the piece that really matters.
That's so true. Mariska, before we sign off, you are one of our expert presenters on Talking Heads. You've been doing this for a while. Tell our audience, what are some of the subjects that you have discussed and will be discussing, and how do they find your show?
Ooh, okay. So some of the topics that I have discussed and will be discussing, we have explored a little bit around emotional intelligence. We have explored a little bit around teamwork. We have explored a bit around self-awareness. And then we have also looked at, what was the very last one? The very last one was around, as a specialist, moving into leadership, or even within our leadership space, moving up into leadership. So that is the space where typically I love coaching. And in saying that, all the other elements, because we are human beings, so, well, we don't put pieces of ourselves into little jars and put it in the cupboard, and then when we go home, we open the little jars and we put them back. We typically carry our whole selves with us everywhere we go, which is a good thing. It's the way it's supposed to be. We don't always show everything or live as fully as we can everywhere that we do. So that is part of what I work with others. And in saying that, that is part of what our training has mostly incorporated. So little bits of everything. Where you can find it is on USA Global TV platform. And as far as I remember, Dr. Jacalyn, you need to correct me here, is also on YouTube.
That's exactly right. It's under Talking Heads 2023 and Talking Heads Mariska Dupree. So you have two places where people can find it. And then the Talking Heads you did last year is under 2022.
Yeah. And if you go back even further, you will find one for 2021 as well.
Ta-da!
Yeah, what can I say? We've been doing this for a while, right?
Yes. And as of, I think it was yesterday, we've brought on a second search engine optimization channel manager. And he's already started down that path, and I'm looking for a third one. And I'd really like to have a woman if possible, so we have a little diversity there. So any of you females out there who are experts in search engine optimization on YouTube, please do reach out to me. You know where to find me. I'm all over social media. Literally. I think I mentioned yesterday that Facebook, if you look on my profile, it says Rising Star. They gave me an award for being the top 1% of all content creators on Facebook. So it lasts for a week. It goes week by week. So we'll see what happens. But that's never happened. And I've been on there since 2006. So
wow. So for anybody else out there that think, well, fame happens overnight, Dr. Jacalyn is a perfect example. It does not happen overnight. There's a lot of hard work behind it.
So much. And I think what people don't realize is that unless you know you are an expert in a search engine like YouTube, Google, for example, you will not get the presence that you need by trying to figure it out yourself. Because YouTube, I think recently, one of my channel managers told me they just changed the algorithm. So they're constantly changing it so that you have to keep experts on board to keep up with it. So anyway, that's what we're doing. We're going to add a third person on. So
Well, that's very exciting. The team is growing and growing.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. So what time is it there, Mariska?
Oh, it is 11:49 for me in the morning on a Tuesday.
So it's almost noon on a Tuesday, and here it's almost 8 p.m. on a Monday.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
It is. It is.
Well, thank you for joining us for our first episode of A Woman's Prerogative Part 2. You can find us here each week. If you'd like to be a guest, we'd love to have you. Go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com. You'll see that this second option is there for people to book in. Mariska, feel free to invite your friends, relatives, strangers, doesn't matter.
And the first person I get passed by on the street.
That's right. Hey, come on. So, all right, we're signing off for now. Please do reach out to Mariska. She's on LinkedIn. You can find her there. You can also find her on her website, journey2discover.com. You can email her first name, Mariska, at journey2discover.com. You can find her on Instagram, which is a little bit different there. What is it on Instagram?
Your journey. To still a 2 discover.
Fantastic. Do reach out. Thank you. Mariska, have a beautiful rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you Thursday evening at this same time, which is your 11 a.m.
Yes, 11 a.m. on a Friday for me, but a Thursday evening for you guys.
So it's the same time both days. I like it.
Yeah.
Tuesdays and Fridays. Fantastic. All right. Thank you, everyone. Please do like and subscribe. And also, please do reach out to Mariska. We really would appreciate it. You can reach out to me too. Why not? So
yeah. Hey, you just posted a job ad on live TV. So I would hope that they reach out.
Reach out. Whether you're watching live or on the replay, please do. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.